We all want to make great music, and that has to do with planning and purpose and training. So we're going to talk about how we do that. How do we make great music in worship? And I think first it's important to consider, what is great music in worship? That's a very key aspect of this, because when it comes to great music in worship, it needs to be music that supports the singing. Ultimately, it's all about the lyric. It's all about the vocals. And the music behind that needs to support it, make it easier to sing, make the singing more powerful. Everything serves the vocals. Keep that in mind, which therefore supports the lyric. We are not just singing empty words. These are words of truth and power, transforming power. They're often the very words of God, and so we want to do our best to support the lyric and make it understandable and make it powerful in its musical setting. And finally, music really stirs the soul. Music really has this emotional power to it, and if we are creating average music or just okay music or slipshod music, it's not going to have that impact on the soul, on the emotional power of it. And so for those reasons, it's very important that we provide great music in worship. And here's why. Number one, we need to be offering our very best to God. This is our act of worship. David said, "I will not offer to God something that cost me nothing." It should take effort. It should take time, practice to bring excellence to God. Psalm 33:3 enjoins us to play skillfully. Well, that requires practice and preparation. And so we want to offer our very best to God. Second, we want to minimize distraction. We live in a culture that has excellent music. You can go anywhere. You can find great music of any type. And so when people walk into a church, the expectation is that they would find the same thing. Now, they're not expecting, perfection. They're not expecting America's Got Talent. They are expecting excellence, though. They're still expecting us to do our very best to provide something beautiful and that is not distracting. So because our culture has such high expectations, I think it's important that we try to do our very best to provide excellent music. We want to make great music because it will bring attention to where it belongs on the lyric. If the music is subpar, that will draw attention to itself. That's part of the distracting aspect of it. But if the music is good, it's going to lift the lyric and spotlight it in a way that makes it memorable. I believe that the primary role of a worship leader is to teach, and we use music as our tool to teach. And so great music should enable us to teach well. And finally, great music will promote unity. It'll help us to sing together. If the music is solid, again, it will draw attention to itself if it's not. And if it is excellent, then people can focus on singing together. And singing is one of those things that we all do together. Our mouths are all moving in the same way at the same time when we're singing. It's a very unique aspect of Christian worship that is a powerful picture of our unity. And so great music will bring us together. And that specifically leads me to my first point about what makes great music. And that is rhythmic tightness. There are really two things that I think that make music, that take us from good to great. And one of those is being together rhythmically. So how do we do that? Well, one, I think it has to do with knowing your place in the sonic spectrum. And what I mean by that is, where does your instrument or your voice fit in the sound spectrum? Now, you'll recall that in the range of human hearing, we have from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. And we classify this as low, low mid, mid, and high. And you need to identify the instrument that you're playing or the voice that you're singing, the part, and see where you fit on this scale. For example, drums will cover various aspects of the scale. The kick will be down here, the toms down here, the snare, hi-hat, cymbals. So the drummer needs to be aware at all times of where they are engaging in this sonic spectrum. The same is true of the keyboard player. They can play all over the place. Now, if they're just playing pads, they're probably down in this area. Acoustic guitar somewhere in the middle. Electric guitar can be up here. Keyboard can be up here. Violin would be up here. The vocals are in this area with this range, the high mids being the area of the vocal spectrum that gives us its distinctness and clarity and understandability. And so whatever instrument you're playing and whatever notes you're playing, be conscious of where those are falling on this scale. Because if everything is falling, say, right here, it's going to sound very muddy, it's unintelligible and difficult. Instead, we want to spread it out. We want to spread the love and just be aware of where you're playing so that you don't have everyone playing in the same section of this spectrum. We also call this the pie principle. Perhaps you've seen this illustration before, where you think of your entire sound spectrum as a pie, and each of you has a section. Say these are the pieces of the pie. I don't know if you cut your pie in 6 pieces or 8 pieces. And say you've got 8 people on your team. Each of them has a space of the sonic spectrum. They have a piece of the pie. If you're a drummer, you've probably got a pretty big piece of that pie. In fact, you might be taking up a lot of this. That sometimes is what happens and what gives us not so good music at sometimes. But you got to think about what is your space in that sonic spectrum, and don't take up more of your space than you should. The larger the pie, the number of players and singers in your pie, the smaller the piece you're going to have, right? So always be asking yourself, what is my piece of the pie? Now, if it's a 2-piece band, then you get a bigger piece of the pie. And I think you understand that. So just be thinking about that as you work with the team and telling people that, hey, you don't need to play as much because there are more of us. Remind everyone that it's their job to support the melody. It's not about demonstrating what a fantastic player they are, but they always have to ask themselves, is this lead line, is this rhythm part, is this pad that I'm playing, is that supporting the melody? Next, lock into the groove and focus on consistency and simplicity. One of the rookie mistakes that people make is to try to make things too complicated. Worship music just shouldn't be that complicated. It should be very solid. People want a firm foundation rhythmically. They don't want to, that the rhythm is the foundation of the music, so lock into it. Enter and exit the junctions. By this, I mean, this is common sense. It means that you come in at the start of a section of the song, whether that's a chorus or a verse. You don't come in somewhere along measure 2 or 3, okay? You don't fade out, on measure 6. There are just natural places where songs will grow and decrease, and you need to come in and out at those places. Very important, too, to remember that not playing is an option. Again, a rookie mistake is often to have an all play. Everyone plays all the time. Good musicians know when not to play. Less is more. Play like you mean it. What I mean by that is play with confidence. Know your part, know it well, and come in and play it like you mean it. If you don't know it well, if you can't play it well, then don't play it. And then finally, cultivate feel. Become so confident in the music that you're really into the feel. Your body's moving and you're grooving and you're locked in. That's what we mean by rhythmic tightness. The second thing that will take your music from good to great, I believe, is the use of dynamics. And to do that, I think you've got to map out the song in detail. You've got to think through and plan who's in and who's out. Where are we building this thing? Where are we dropping out completely? Where are we going to fade out or fade back in? And where can we have some variety in our instrumentation so that maybe the lead guitar has the line at the beginning, but then the keyboard picks it up later on and then passes it off to even a vocalist. There's just different ways to create variety. One of the things that has changed in worship music in the last 30, 50 years is that songs have become longer and more complex. A typical song will have 3 or 4 different distinct parts: a verse, a chorus, a bridge, a turnaround, an intro. All those things are different parts of the song. And if they all sound the same, have the same instrumentation, the same dynamics all the way through, it is torturous. And now, back in the day, you'd have a hymn, you had 4 verses, and you sang them all the same, and no one really noticed because we just didn't do dynamics. But now, modern music really demands that you do dynamics, or it will just drive your congregation crazy. Well, one of the ways that I've done this is to take a song and really analyze it. And this is just one page of how you might do this. And what I mean here is you would by sequence, I mean what part of the song. So you've got your intro, then your verse, then your chorus, perhaps, and you would go through the entire song this way. And you'd listen through the intro, who is in, what are they playing, each one of these, vocalist, who's in, what are they doing? Are they unison on the vocals? Is there a alto part? And you just analyze that, and you have your team analyze the song. Now, if we were in class, we would just stop and do this right now, so you could see the power of this, to really listen carefully to a song and to see how great music is dynamic music. The final thing you want to do is make sure that everyone in your team understands their unique role in the ensemble. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because you've already covered this in previous parts of the course, but it's important to remember each musician has a role, and if they don't understand this, you need to train them. You need to teach them this. So for percussionists, you need to practice with the click. You've got to develop a solid rhythm. Practice individually and then practice as a team with a click. Consistent groove is better than busyness. Simplify, simplify, simplify is what I would tell a beginning percussionist especially. Position yourself for communication with the team. Make sure that as a drummer, you can see everyone and they can see you. You are the foundation. Match the intensity of the song with the other musicians. So be thinking musically, be playing musically. It's not just about being loud, but being musical. Bass guitar, lock into that kick drum. I mean, keep your eyes on the kick drum, communicate with your drummer so that you are playing exactly what that kick drum is playing. If you two are playing different things, it's just muddy. It's just a muddy mess. So lock into that kick drum. Move the song forward. Many people don't realize how powerful the bass guitar is in driving a song forward and giving it energy, pushing. I'm not talking tempo wise. I'm not talking about rushing, of course. I'm just saying a good bass player can move the song forward. Don't play like a frustrated lead guitarist. In other words, simplify. Don't try to play too much. You don't have to play fancy lines. Just move the song. Timing is everything. Think about how you're coming in. Maybe there's a way that you can walk into a particular part of a song or walk out of it. So think about that. Tone is not everything, but it helps. It's worth getting an active DI box where you can process your tone to improve it, and working with your audio tech to do this. Don't clash with the keyboard or the pad. Keyboard player, pad player, they're down in the same sonic spectrum that you are, so watch out. Make sure you're playing the same things, you're moving at the same time. Be listening for that in your mix. Rhythm electric. Realize you're not playing acoustic. You don't need to strum as much. You're just filling out the mids. Play rhythmically. Match other instruments. Make sure that what you're playing rhythmically matches the others. Play texturally. So think about the sounds that you're using and filling that out in the mid-range. Use your effects wisely. Probably not as much distortion as you might think. A little bit goes a long way. How about lead guitar? Again, thinking clean entrances and exits. This is your moment to shine, to play a lead line, but don't play it all the time. Think about how you can also play pad type things, texture, atmosphere. Make sure that your leads support the melody and the lyric. You might have a cool lead, but if it doesn't work with the melody, don't do it. Listen for open spaces to fill, but don't compete with the lyric. So look for those spots. Don't clash with the keyboard. This is an area where keyboard player can also play up in that same upper range. So make sure the two of you are working together, not playing on top of each other. And I say don't noodle in rehearsal. Anyone can noodle. By that I mean just playing around all the time irritatingly. From my experience, it's often a lead guitar player that does that. Not necessarily, but that goes for everyone. Acoustic guitar, you want to have a consistent locked-in strumming pattern. Again, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Create open sounds with your voicings. If you do have more than one acoustic guitar, make sure that you're either locked in tight with each other, or more easily, you want to play in different registers, different voicings, so that you're complementing one another, and EQ that thing so there's a lot of clarity with it. The keyboard. There's some interesting transitions right there. Take the pi principle seriously, right? You have the capacity to be everywhere sound-wise, so think about that. Minimize. If you're playing solo, it's one thing. You have to do it all. But if you're in an ensemble as a keyboard player, you need to simplify. Take it down to one hand if you need to. Just use that right hand. Tie that left hand behind your back, because it's just going to muddy things up if you're not careful. Watch out for the lead guitarist, because you're going to be in the same area. On the low end, watch out with the bass player. Smooth voice leading, so just think about how you're transitioning between chords with as little movement as possible as you're going from inversions of chords. And generally, you're not going to want to play the melody, right? Unless you are teaching a song and you need it out there. Pad, keep it simple, keep it open, so no thirds, play fifths or octaves, smooth voice leading like a keyboard player. Practice your transitions, changing those keys between songs. Again, listening for the bass. Use layered sounds if you can to make it, give it some depth. And I say be visually engaged, because I recall I had a pad player once who looked like she was falling asleep. I mean, yes, I know sometimes it can be that boring. Lead vocals, remember that everyone is looking at you. They're following you. Their eyes are on you. So they're watching for cues. So do what you can to provide a simple, clear lead. This is not a time to show off and impress with your vocal chops, but just keep it simple and clear. Sing in tune and in rhythm, which means you got to hear well. You have to have your monitor mixed right. Use proper mic technique, close mic'd. Lead with your mic. Realize that when you lift your mic to your lips, that's the cue for the congregation to sing. So do that in a timely way. Let that be your, give them a couple seconds to bring the mic up, and they'll be ready to sing with you. Background vocals. Always be thinking blend. Only sing the melody to emphasize phrases or key lyrics. So if you're going to sing melody, sing unison, that needs to be purposeful musically. If there's more than one background vocal, stick to your harmony part. Stick to your part. And there's kind of a rule, but you don't cross one another on your vocal background lines. Okay, don't upstage the lead vocal, so you don't want to be louder or draw attention to yourself. You want to match rhythms, entrances, and exits. Being careful there. Practice your gestures and expression, all of that, so that you're very comfortable on stage, because the eyes are on you. All right, that's it. Some quick tips on creating great music with a band.